Hi, this is Alicia Lamb doing the revisions to my lesson plan and seeing what I needed to improve on throughout the lesson. Just a brief review, I did a Just Words reading intervention lesson for fifth graders. I have two students that are virtual only, and I have 4 fifth graders that are doing this program, and then I also have 7 sixth graders completing this program, but my focus was on the fifth grade group. So what I noticed, although my groups did well, there were a couple students that fell behind their peers and they did not score the 80% average needed to move on to the next unit. So some of the revisions I had considered is to slow down on daily lessons. Sometimes I do find myself moving a little bit quickly just because we were either short on time or we've had several interruptions into our schedule and it gets us behind. Provide extra opportunities for review. So part of this program, if it's also part of a Wilson program, and if students don't get it, then we go back the next day and we review until they get it and get it. That isn't how Just Words is set up. It's set up to move a little bit faster. So that would be something I would need to implement, is taking more opportunities for them to spell, read the words I write, or spell out with the word cards fluently and accurately. I could also make some note cards for them to practice marking up or reading through. And then consider one-on-one lesson for someone struggling more than their peers. This is something where I could find some other activity for the group members to complete, whether it be them quizzing each other on their vocabulary words or them grading each other's work on marking something up while I work with the struggling student and getting them a little bit more accurate with their skills. So how do the tasks yield appropriate evidence of the identified understanding? Each task that we do demonstrates the student's ability to apply phonics concepts. So at the beginning of the lesson, we do like a just start. There's either vocabulary or high frequency words that are introduced. And then as we move through the lesson, we go through and do their letter keyword sounds, making sure they know all the sounds and all the letters that go together, so your phonemes. And then as we keep moving on, I build words, they build words, we mark up words, and we check for that understanding when they read passages and that those passages read are read accurately and fluently. And so by gauging those two things, if I know they're making a lot of errors in their reading as far as their accuracy goes, then they haven't mastered what the skill is. We can also demonstrate the understanding by having them read nonsense words accurately. So in a nonsense word, we look at the word nined. I know that IND is a welded exception. It should always say IND, not end. So if a student would read end, then I know they don't have the skill. But if they read IND, it's something they're not familiar with from seeing multiple times, but that they are applying the skills that they do have learned to mastery. So how are these things real world? Application, that we have to know how to read and spell. It's a very important skill, and right now the students I have are lacking in their phonics, and if they're lacking in their phonics, then they're not reading fluently and it impacts their ability to comprehend. It also impacts their ability as we go further along decoding multisyllabic words. And then even further along, when we get into Greek and Latin roots and understanding what prefixes, suffixes, and root words mean and breaking down a word into meanings, that once we're able to do those things, then kids can decode the vocabulary within their reading and be able to comprehend what they are reading without a lot of difficulty. So starting at the smallest level is just being able to decode a word, and then as we move up it gets more intense, and being able to decode our vocabulary throughout our reading is what helps us comprehend. Our appropriate assessments. We assess a lot in Wilson. Our formal assessment in Just Words requires a pretest. It's a series of phrases that works on words that are spelled phonetically and high frequency words, and it starts from CVC, works down to multisyllabic and suffixes and prefixes. So you should have, as you move through your book, the first 5, let's see, we're in unit 5 right now, so the first 7 parts is something we have learned. Hopefully they have gotten 100% on those parts, and then as they go on we should see some errors because it hasn't been taught concepts yet. We do a mid-chapter check after every 5 days, and then a summative assessment at the end. These are areas where, like, if they don't do so hot on a mid-chapter check, we go back and review. So if they don't pass the summative assessment within 80%, then there are also review lessons we can do with that. The informal observation comes from, or informal assessment just comes from me doing a teacher observation. I am constantly checking their work through every lesson, dictation, checking their spelling. If they make errors, I provide feedback. I often have students maybe lead a session where we have to mark words and they have to explain why we are doing it. So, and how are students given the opportunity to self-assess? And this is kind of where, when I was saying that students have to go through and explain to their class why we box welded sounds, and with welded exceptions we cross out the C because it's really not a closed syllable, because it's not following the rules. So they can assess their skills by things that I say, go back and check. We also review all of their pre-test, mid-chapter checks, and summative assessments. I go over the scores with them. I show what they missed, what we need to work on, and they can then apply that later on, or if it's poor, like I said, we go over it again. So that is the end. Hope that was clear because it was very quick, but everyone have a good rest of your semester, and thank you for listening.